Hi, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of Positive Traction with Coach Henry. Again, thank you for tuning in and watching, a little bit of both. Today, I am very happy to share, I would say now a unique way that we met, but we'll talk about that. I would say almost 7 years,
Yep.
give or take. Yeah. So without further ado, who are you?
Hello, listeners. My name is Taylor. I also go by the 9 to 5 entrepreneur. I am a full-time federal agent, real estate investor, and all-around business owner and coach. I'm also the founder and CEO of my nonprofit called Wealth Roots. It is a financial literacy education organization for people of color.
Well, there you go. That was a tagline, but I love it, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. There's a lot of great plugs that you just shared, so we will unpack a couple of them as we go on this little journey together. So let's start with how we met, because technically it ended well in the journey I was in, but how we met. Why don't you share your version for a moment? Because everybody, if you missed it, she was like, real quick on that, federal. I mean, now you're private, so you can't say you're federal anymore.
No, yeah, I'm still federal.
You're still federal, yeah. So, but what was the federal part that you did for 5 or 6 years?
So I started my career as a state trooper in Mississippi. I was like the 7th or 8th ever Black woman to graduate Mississippi Highway Patrol. So I was a state trooper there for about 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay.
And then I left and went federal, and I was with the Secret Service for about 6 years. So I was a Secret Service agent here in LA, worked the field. Then I went over to the Vice President's detail for about a year. Then I decided to move back to LA and pursue my entrepreneurship endeavors.
Well, we will. You just threw a lot out in a very short. So we're definitely going to unpack what you can share, obviously. But before we go to that, I just want to give people a premise that if you're watching the clips on YouTube, you'll see that you're so beautiful demeanor, just chill. Yeah. But this girl, again, state trooper, Secret Service, Vice President detail. Come on, that's all right. So don't mess with her. That being said, how did we meet 7 years ago?
Yeah. So I am a former gym owner, and I owned a franchise called Mayweather Boxing and Fitness. And we had a mutual friend who I was, at the time before the pandemic happened, I was already looking to expand, potentially get a second location. And he introduced us, and he was like, hey, I got a buddy out here, and he has a boxing gym. Like, I think it's really nice. And it was completely on the other side because I was in Torrance. So being in Agora Hills, like, you know, it's like, okay, like this could be a whole new community. So I came out, he introduced us, and we kind of hit it off, right? We started talking about real estate, and I think I was just starting my real estate journey. And you know, we got some mitts in. I think I still have that video on my Instagram, way down there.
When this airs, we gotta dig that up and share it. I always say nothing better than connecting with some mitt work.
Yeah,
right?
Oh, we had a good time. I didn't even have a ponytail holder. I just remember my hair flying around. So I had braids, and I was like trying to punch. So no, we had a good time, and and then from there we kind of stayed in touch. I started getting the newsletters, and we catch up on the phone here and there, and then. Recently I'm like, let me touch base with Coach and see what's going on. So.
Well, I'm glad that you did, and now we're off to new endeavors together, and I love it. Yeah, and during that time for you guys is KO, as a lot of you know, was a tremendous and powerful community that to this day is circling. And at the time, I had to make the decision to leave a beautiful situation for what potentially could be better. At the time, potential was the key word. But I knew, and we prayed about it, and it was just the right thing to do. And I didn't, we wanted to be, it's a home, it's a beautiful thing, and heard good things about you through the connection. And it wasn't meant to be. And after we met, and I couldn't have turned it over to anybody better with your heart and passion, but it wasn't meant to be. And through some good counsel, we decided just call it a day and say, you know what, let's leave KO rest in peace. It was a beautiful run. Lives were changed and blessed, including mine. So, and then, like you said, you're getting into real estate. I was diving in more, and we'll get into the 9 to 5 entrepreneur in a moment.
Yeah.
So that is how we met. So good. Well, let's for those that have been waiting, let's get into one story, maybe one state trooper story, or I mean, come on, you said you're the seventh or eighth of color of in that time, right?
Yeah.
So just one of the episodes that we just finished was on grit and resilience,
Yeah.
which I know you have to have
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur
Yeah.
and a successful 9 to 5er. You have mixed those worlds, so we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But tell us, as a state trooper, and then we'll just give everybody a little teaser of like, what was it like? I mean, what
Yeah.
is something that sticks out to you? And you were very young. I mean, you're still very young.
Yeah.
So you started your career probably 2021?
No, I started in 20.
No. How old you were?
Oh, yeah, I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
I was 20. I turned 21 a month before the academy started.
Wow.
And yeah, I have a couple of stories from Highway Patrol, but being, like on the surface, I can be kind of timid sometimes and just kind of be like to myself, but it only takes a minute to flip a switch and I could be a totally different person.
Well, listen.
It could be good or bad.
Yeah, but like I said, I've had the pleasure of boxing with you.
Yeah.
So I love that switch. You
Yeah.
wouldn't be as successful as you are today if you didn't have that switch.
Yeah.
You obviously are learning and continue to learn, as we all are as entrepreneurs, to harness that. So
Absolutely.
it's effective and,
Exactly.
and beneficial.
Exactly.
But you're 21 years old, fresh out of the academy,
Yep.
seventh or eighth of color coming into this world of carrying a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, let's start there.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of pressure. The county that I went to, it's called Jones County in Laurel, Mississippi. Very close to Hattiesburg. So if you ever heard of USM, University of Southern Mississippi is in that area. So I want to say I was the first female trooper that county ever had.
Wow.
And mind you, we don't have many female troopers in general, in the Highway Patrol, at least at one time.
Right.
And so it was the talk of the town. They did a news article
Wow.
and
Yeah.
all these things. I remember my mom came down and helped me look for an apartment. And I didn't really want the attention because, it's like, okay, you think you're somebody, you
Yeah,
come down
yeah,
here,
yeah.
and I'm getting all this attention. And then I have to prove myself. And as a woman in law enforcement, I think we all go through that, just having to prove ourselves because we're in a male dominant.
You're right. One of the guests that I had, she is in her second year at the jail. Out
Yeah.
here, they make you work the jail for 2 years.
Yeah.
So, and then many of my great friends are all women that did not. You guys, if I lined you all up, you're all the same initial demeanor.
Yeah.
Very chill.
Yeah.
And one was actually my right hand for years.
Yeah.
And I remember years after, she was like, "Hey, coach, guess what? I'm going to go for law enforcement." And I'm like, "What?" And she did 8 years in her home
Yeah.
patrol car. So I get it. I get it. So
cool.
continue, please.
Yeah, so I got down there and I made some connections, and my mom actually ran into the chief of Laurel at bingo or something. I don't know how she got in there or how they ended up connecting, but she was like, "Oh, you're the chief. I need you to take care of my baby." She's scared for me. And so I connected with him, and may he rest in peace. He was like a dad to me, though. And him and his family, they took me in, and I didn't have washer and dryer at my place. So I would go over there on Sundays, and they would cook for me and I would wash my clothes. So I made family down there. And I had some cool experiences. I got into a few chases, some roadblocks, fun stuff.
So things in Mississippi go down.
Oh, it goes down. It goes down in Mississippi. But, and then I think the most impactful part of that, though, was the actual academy.
Oh.
Because it's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
That academy, we started out with 148 cadets. Mm-hmm. We graduated with 48. And then me being the only female, we started with 2 females. It was me and another girl. And man, it was tough, but it was very pivotal as far as the grit, because we actually had fight nights we have to fight.
Wow.
So if I'm the only female, I have to fight the guys. You
Yeah.
know, I can't lean on, oh, me and the girl will
Well,
fight.
like you said, going back to flipping a switch, it had to happen.
It had to.
You know, and I just want to touch base on that for a moment, Tate, because the whole platform of this show for me is to help people apply whatever the guests are sharing into life. And
Yeah.
one of the common words lately is grit, right?
Yeah.
And you're still very young, so you can relate directly with, let's just say, a 10-year gap.
Yeah.
With, let's say, the next generation of 20-year-olds coming up, where, well, what does grit mean? You have, I mean, come on, let's just, again, 148 cadets, 2 women only, 48 made it. Was the other woman make it also?
She could have.
She could have.
She left for personal reasons, but she was tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 of you basically made it of that. So 48, I mean, that's amazing. But if people, I want people to visualize. That's why I stopped for a moment.
Yeah.
Because in today, everybody has to learn what it's like to finish what you start.
Yeah.
To commit, to make your word mean something to yourself more than anything else.
Yeah.
So you are saying there's 2 of you, you had to fight the guys, you were treated equal because you needed equal, or you'd get eaten up on the streets, right?
yeah.
So that at 21 years old, so now grit, resilience, now you're on patrol. And give us a funny there, because I'm going to move you right into the Secret Service.
Okay. You say give us a what?
Give us a little fun one that just like, whoa, was it a pullover? Was it a draw a gun? Was it a chase? Was you had to tackle somebody? What you got?
I would say my first chase was very interesting because I never caught the guy, but I was on my way. I was working a 2-lane road. I was working my way down to Hattiesburg for our monthly like all call. So when you're working your way down, you just write tickets on the way. I just started heading that way like maybe an hour or 2 early, write tickets on the way. Cool. So I'm going down, it's 2-lane. Truck comes running by me, speeding, flip the lights, turn around. And I could hear my FTO, my training officer, because when we were training, we got into a chase too, but we were together. And he always told me, don't take my seatbelt off. And I had a bad habit of popping my seatbelt before the car stopped. And he's like, you might get into a chase. And lo and behold, I like popped my seatbelt off. And this guy goes taking down the dirt road. And I was like, oh, put my seatbelt back on.
Yeah.
So I'm going down this dirt road and he's gone. And there was a guy working. I said, did you see where he went? And he was like, he went that way. So I drive and I get on the radio and like my voice is kind of shaky, but I'm trying to stay calm. And I'm like, I can't remember the code for it, but I told him like I was in the chase, whatever the 10 code was for that at the time. I'm like, hey, like I'm in the chase. And so the other guy, one of my other coworkers tried to come down to meet me, but by the time he met me, like I had lost the guy,
Right.
Because he knew those back roads. It was like literally just grass. Like I don't even know how.
Well,
he
like
got
you said,
through there.
Mississippi, they got a lot of secrets out there.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He knew those roads.
He knew him. But the moral of the story is like, you know, the reason why that training is so hard, and I would say they probably even harder on me as a woman, is because like your help is 20, 30 minutes away, and that's with them flying. You know, so you got to be able to hold your own out there when you got somebody in their mind, they're not going to jail.
Well, you know what, and I don't want to take this lightly. You were on your own.
Yeah.
And I think that is why you are where you are in life, in business, and where you're going to go to. Again, I'm going to remind you of your age. You know, you share it later if you want, but you're very young. And think about that. You have no help coming.
Yeah.
For 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's where the 911 gets some backup. Here, we always live in a city, you have backup within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, that had to do something for you that really got you ready for, you know, right now, even at this stage of your life. Like,
Absolutely.
Some of the things you had to already go through for the COVID days and having a business and all those things. So thank you for sharing that. So in that, just to give a little bit more of your mental, what brought you in to wanting to be in law enforcement? Because, you know, what was your motivational factor to tackle being the only female in that, especially in that county, like you said, and all that?
Yeah, I love challenges like that. When I hear, oh, there aren't that many, you know, women or whatever, I'm like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
But it actually goes back to my uncle, my mom's brother. He was in law enforcement. And I actually since I was like first or second grade, I always said I wanted to be the police.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I always wanted to be in law enforcement, and I didn't really know what that meant, but my uncle was in law enforcement. I think that's just why. And
Was he an officer?
he was an officer. He was also in the military, and unfortunately, he passed before I even went into law enforcement.
So he never got a chance to see you, but
Nope.
hopefully he looked down and saw you.
It was a big driving factor for me.
Right.
I was just like, I'm gonna make him proud,
Oh, that's
and I
beautiful.
always knew that I was like, oh, I wish he could be here to see
Yeah.
me graduate, and I anytime I accomplished something, and I
Well, I
think
bet
of
your
him.
mama was very proud, though, for
Yeah.
many reasons,
Yeah.
but also I'm sure her brother was very special to her.
Oh, he was. They
Yeah.
talked every day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big reason why I got into it, and specifically the highway patrol was right around the time when he passed, and I got pulled over by a state trooper.
Oh.
And he wrote me a ticket, but I told him, I was like, well, I'm actually on my way to turn in an application for Madison Police Department, which was the city, because I was too young to do anything else. I was going to have to pay for myself. And he basically was like, why don't you come to highway patrol? We're about to have a class. We haven't had a class in 4 years, 4 years. Like, you'd be a great asset. And so that's kind of how it sparked my interest. And I went home and watched a ton of videos. And
But let's back up for a minute. So the ticket stuck. He left you the ticket?
yeah, I got it dismissed because he wrote me like the tag was expired.
Okay.
So he was like, I'm going to write you a ticket. Go get the tag, take it to court, they'll dismiss it.
So that's a beautiful thing. But this is, to me, the blessings of life. Had that not happened,
Yeah.
you didn't get that speech, for lack of better.
Yeah.
And you might have went and did it, and that's how life happens. And that's why I love you've heard of my 3 Ps, plan, pray, and proceed. But I really believe that, because sometimes I think, Tay, that people put so much pressure on all or nothing.
Yeah.
It's either one way or another way, and I believe there's a good gray. I really do.
Yeah.
I believe when you're doing the right things, there's a good gray.
Yeah.
So, okay, congrats on that. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. I love the tenacity, and especially in the 7 years we've known each other. So now take me to Secret Service. Now you're a trooper. What got you into the Secret Service?
Well, so this part of my life is when I really learned about using my resources and just like being aggressive and like consistent in things. So actually my highway patrol coworkers are the reason why I went federal, because they saw something in me that I didn't see. And at the time I was like getting my master's, and I just had things going for myself.
You had a plan.
Yeah. I just didn't know what that was. I wanted to excel in my career as a state trooper. And I had several of my coworkers be like, you need to get out of here. Like, you got a lot going for yourself. Like, you should go federal. Like, you could be doing way more. If you don't do it now, you're going to look up in 10 years past,
Wow.
and you're going to be stuck here, and it's going to be too late.
I love just that part of people that felt comfortable enough and also
Yeah.
cared about you enough
Yeah.
to share something. Because it's if you didn't have confidence, you could take that like, what, I'm not good enough, or it's not
Yeah.
good enough for me, right? But instead you listened, obviously, and
Yeah.
and that rattled your cage a little bit.
Yeah.
So that puts you about 23, give or take.
Yeah, I would say actually like 22.
22.
Like
Okay.
22, because I turned 23 in the Secret Service Academy.
Okay.
So-
How was that academy compared to the
Oh, it was a piece of cake. Yeah, Secret Service Academy is more like college.
Yeah, okay,
Like,
okay.
they kind of treat you like an adult, but like you gotta have smarts to be, in Secret Service. So you don't need to be macho.
Right.
You have some of those guys there, but you need to be smart.
Savvy.
Yeah. You got to be able to think quick on your toes, doing security stuff, and just thinking outside the box when it comes to like taking care of literally the biggest title in our country.
So Secret Service, so like when you got into federal, and like what of all the federal agencies, I mean, you could have gone a
Right.
thousand different ways, especially at that age.
Yeah.
You got state troopers under your belt already, probably very good connections, as you said. You could have gone FBI, CIA, I mean, all kinds. Why Secret Service?
I tried all of them.
Okay.
So my first one, because I don't really know at that age. All I knew about federal was FBI.
Right.
And when people think of me, they're like, "Oh, you're in the FBI, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
Because they don't know like the difference.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks everything's FBI. So
Right.
I went to FBI. And mind you, I'm like 21, 22 at the time. FBI doesn't start hiring until 23.
Okay.
Even though you're eligible, they look at maturity, so they want you to be a little bit older. So I was too young for FBI, and then I put in for the Air Marshals, I put in for CIA, and I put in for Secret Service. So I got a call back from the Air Marshals and from the CIA, and the Air Marshals had hired me actually, and then I went to CIA. I went through the whole interview process, and I just wasn't feeling it because it was more of an officer, and I wanted to be an agent.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so with CIA, you have to work your way up.
Right.
And
You
I was
they
like,
don't just plop you out there.
no. And I was like, no, I don't want to stand around and like check people into the office every day.
Right,
Like that's
right.
not what I want to do. So I told them no, and then the air marshals had hired me, and they were going to send me to New Jersey, and they were waiting for me to respond. And then I had also applied to Secret Service, and actually one of my mom's coworkers told me about Secret Service. So again, this goes back to a quick lesson: is always talk about like what you're doing, because you never know who you're talking to and who has resources that can help you. So,
Yeah.
I'm telling my mom's friends, because my mom works at the VA, like, this is what I'm trying to do. So when that application opened, they called me like, hey, Secret Service just put out an opening, you should apply. So that's how I found out about it.
Nice.
And so I went through and applied, and I got picked up.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you said a couple great things, obviously, but the one about connections and using your resources. Look, sometimes you're the first to get resources going. Sometimes you're next in line. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, good relationships and good resources are the vital part of relationships. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So now you got into the Secret Service. What was your first, you don't need to say, obviously, whatever you can share, but what was your first kind of a detail? Now think about it, you are 23, 24 years old,
Yeah.
Secret Service, protecting some of the most important people in the country. What was that like?
I actually don't remember my very first like detail. Actually, I don't remember. But I know one of the biggest parts is just like traveling. We travel a lot.
Yeah.
So, anytime, and California is a big one. Like, so we have a lot of foreign dignitaries will come to California. And so we had a lot of work here. And then I think while I was in the academy is when Trump won. I literally remember being in bed, like staying up, watching if him or Hillary was going to win.
Yeah.
And then, once it happened, I was like, all right. Turned off the TV and went to bed. I had to go to class the next day. So by the time I got to LA, Trump was in office. So I did a lot of travel to Florida, Mar-a-Lago, and Jersey, where he got a lot. So lots of travel over there. I got to go overseas a lot. So for me, my favorite part was traveling, because I was single, no kids, no partner for real at the time. So it's a single man's job.
Yeah.
It definitely is. So if you're a bachelor or a bachelorette, it's great.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. You definitely don't want to be a statistic of, being in that. So, all right. So thank you for that. So now, in an application to people watching and hearing this show is, I'm going to segue all the way to the 9 to 5 part, right? What inspired you to want to be an entrepreneur? Because you had a great 9 to 5, like you said, enjoying the single life, making some good money, don't have a lot of costs, because I'm sure all that was covered while you were on duty.
Yeah.
So how entrepreneurship, how did you know that you wanted to venture off to something that there was no guarantees in pay, that there is no job security, and you maintained your job?
Yeah.
So what made you want to be that? And tell us a little bit of that struggle, because that's going to segue to what we share here at the end.
Yeah. So I moved to California, or Los Angeles specifically. So I'm originally born here. My parents were born and raised here, and then they separated when I was 3.
Okay.
And my mom's parents are from Mississippi, so our side of the family kind of migrated back to Mississippi.
Okay.
So I would visit Los Angeles during the summers. My grandparents were here. My dad is here, so this was always second home for me. And so getting back to LA was always a dream of mine, growing up in Mississippi. And when I got the opportunity with the service to come out here, I took, they hurried up and sent me because
Yeah.
nobody wants to come to LA.
Right.
So, I came here with the intention of, getting closer to my dad and spending time with my grandparents, my grandfather, and that side of my family. And unfortunately, my grandfather was killed. He was hit by a hit and run driver walking across the street to church. This was 5 months after I just moved to Los Angeles from Mississippi. Now, I had been back and forth, but being here as an adult and the sticker shock and having a $2,500, $2,600, rent, not including
You're not Mississippi anymore.
Oh no, I added a zero to my expenses.
Wow.
And so it was a lot. And then now my grandfather has passed away, and my dad wasn't really, in the position to take over or to just be in that. It was me and my sister. We were next of kin essentially for my grandfather. So now I'm finding myself 5 months into being, rough and tough Secret Service agent to now I'm taking over an estate.
Wow.
And I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And it was tragic too, because he wasn't sick. This was unexpected.
It was a fluke.
And I remember my sister called me. We had just got off the phone around like 9, 10 o'clock. And then she called me back around midnight, and I knew something was wrong.
Yeah, why is she calling you at midnight?
Yeah.
It's the worst calls, I know.
Yeah. And I was like, I just told you I'm going to bed. I got work tomorrow.
Yeah.
So she didn't even tell me what happened, but I don't want to even get into the trauma of all that. But what got me into entrepreneurship was I called my boss because I was on a detail. I was on, I want to say, Pence's daughters at the time. And like I was the only local agent that was on there. So like me not going to work was like it messes up, it messes up logistics.
Thing. Yeah.
But I couldn't go. And I called my boss that morning because I wasn't going to call him at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I called him that morning like, hey, I can't go to work today. Like, I just found out my grandfather was killed and like, I need some time. He was like, okay, like, what do you need, like today and tomorrow off? And I was like, today and tomorrow? Like, I don't think he understood because it's a grandparent. It's not like it's my parents. So maybe that was the reason.
Right.
But I was next of kin. Like, there was a lot for me to do. And he only wanted to give me 2 days off of work. And so I took the 2 days, tried to figure it out. And I was like, this is too much. I came back to work and I almost like lost it. Like I was just so stressed out. And I remember calling one of my other coworkers because I couldn't even talk to my boss. I was like, I'm not calling him. I was like, hey, I need to get off of work. I don't know what I need to do, but like, I'm not coming. Like I'm going crazy right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was like, okay. And so at that time, it was just kind of pivotal for me because I'm like, I like my job. I loved it at the time. I'm traveling and stuff, but like, I don't ever want to be put in a position where I feel like I'm being forced to work when I need a break.
Well, and let's stop there for a moment because I think that's a pivotal point in your life, right? That's hence the 9 to 5 entrepreneur because it was, if anyone that knows you and even the short time I've known you, you're not a quitter. You're not a crybaby, for lack of better. You're not a victim. So you're saying here, look, this is, maybe it's a grandpa, but to me, it was like a father.
Yeah.
To me, it was a very powerful point. And regardless of that, I'm asking for some time off, and you should have a system in place to have someone take them over. And also, you're carrying a gun, protecting someone. The last thing they would want is you not being in your A game.
Absolutely.
Because then that would be horrible for you.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, that person gets hurt on your watch. Well, there's that. So all that inspired you. And the good thing that I want to share with guests is that you took something very difficult and you took a very disturbing challenge. Like you said, you loved it at the time. Yeah. But instead of, again, being the victim, you weren't. You took you obviously finished out many more years, but you took action, hence the entrepreneur part.
Yeah.
So tell us about one of your first entrepreneur projects, because it most likely didn't go well or did go well.
Yeah.
Tell us, because you're juggling that. And mind you, you're still in your mid-20s.
Yeah.
So I want to remind of that so everybody thinks that you can't do it or, you know what?
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons I wanted your story shared, because you're only, may I say, 30,
I'm 30.
30 years old, with all the things you named off, and you're at it. And you're also, what I love about you is that you're willing to be real. Yeah. And I cannot express that enough with people, that yes, things are good, always be better, but always be worse.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us about your juggling Secret Service, which that alone is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Now, what is your first or a entrepreneurial project that you want to share?
Yeah. So I got my master's in business administration while I was in the Secret Service Academy.
That's pretty bad beep.
Oh man, I don't know why I did that. That was some crazy stuff for me to do, but I did it. And I finished my degree.
Congrats.
And I thank you. I graduated like when I moved to LA, I went to my master's graduation and then I started work like the following week.
Wow.
So that was like my first introduction to entrepreneurship. I don't remember anything else about my degree outside of it kind of sparked that interest. And I'm like, okay, my first idea was to open up like a dinner and a movie.
Okay.
And I don't know if this was a thing at the time. If dinner, like now you can go to the movies and there's a bar.
Right. It wasn't at the time.
Yeah.
No,
So
I mean, it wasn't. It didn't really hit. Actually, I can tell you real quick side.
yeah.
In Sherman Oaks was one of the first ones of its kind where
Yeah.
you could sit in your seat and they bring you out.
Yeah.
But that was only maybe 9 years ago. So if you
Yeah.
think about what you were thinking, it was still very new and very
Yeah.
fresh compared to now. It's almost everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking like, anytime you want to go on a date, you want to go to dinner and then you go to the movies, how come we can't just put it in one place?
Yeah.
And so this was like my first idea. This was what, 2016, 2017
Yeah.
at the time when I had the idea. So that was like my first idea. Never, did anything with it. And then shortly after, we buried my grandfather and, I took over his estates and I started thinking about real estate and stuff. I had always wanted to franchise. I learned about franchising through my master's program. And I was like, if I could open a franchise, I still work full time. I don't have time to think about
right.
how to build a business. If I do a franchise, they'll tell me what to do and I'll just go execute it. And
Right.
I'm very good at that. You tell
Yeah.
me what to do, I'm just going to go and do it.
But that's and I want to encourage people. That's a great quality that you know about yourself.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
because entrepreneurship typically means no one tells you what to do.
Right.
Right. You are completely like,
Figuring it
what's
out.
next?
Yeah.
Right. So franchising, to your point, it is normally like a proven system. You're paying premium, but it's
Yeah.
because it's been proven.
Yeah.
Hence the Mayweather situation.
Correct.
But continue on.
Yeah. So I decided it was food or fitness. And at the time my brand was very much so a fitness brand. And I was into boxing because of the highway patrol because we fought a lot.
Yeah.
And so boxing just became a part of like who I was and I enjoyed it. So it was food or fitness. And at the time I was looking at Chick-fil-A and I was also looking at F45. And so Chick-fil-A, very low buy-in, only 10,000, but you had to be, in order to be a Chick-fil-A owner operator, that was all you could do. Like I
Right.
couldn't have kept my job.
That's their secret sauce is they
Yeah.
want you in it.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
was like, when I learned that, I was like, oh no, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
And then F45 was cool, but I didn't really feel like a connection with them. And so then I saw Mayweather ad. And I was looking at it to go to the gym because I was still boxing at the time. I was paying my trainer like $80 a session.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, Mayweather, like I can go box here. So I put in an inquiry and then I went to the page and I was like, oh, they're franchising too. And at the time I was already talking to
Yeah.
franchises. So I was like, oh, let's see what's going on. And the guy, his name is Ma, he called me within like a day or two and we hit it off. Good sales guy, very good sales guy. And he knows what his stuff. And we hit it off and I went to one of the discovery days and met several people that I also hit it off with. And then I started my first business venture, I think a few months later for my 24th birthday or 25th birthday.
Yeah.
I wrote a $25,000 check on my birthday to start my business.
Nice. Congrats on that alone. Again, obviously you took your hard-earned money plus whatever you had to take over from your grandpa and kind of said, okay, I'm going to venture off. But again, you knew enough as an entrepreneur that you wanted to be able to have something kind of already in place.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to kind of restart the wheel.
Yeah.
Add your flavor, add what you are good at. And I think that's great for young entrepreneurs out there. We're not young in age, just young at entrepreneurship that start with something. And I always tell that to people. It's like, look, start with something wisdom is already going down a road that's been paved initially.
Yeah, exactly.
There's plenty of time to go build your own roads, go build a unforested and all that, but you got to have grit. Unless you have all that, it's going to be a rough start.
Yeah.
So kudos to you on knowing that.
Yeah.
So now we're going to segue back into the vice presidency of detail. What can you share either about what you took away from that, good or bad, and what is a cool story that you can share from that? That'd be great. And
Yeah.
you could, I don't know if you could share who you were on detail, but it's
Yeah,
okay.
okay.
Yeah, and then I think it'd be cool for listeners to kind of go because I think it's so relevant when they see you again, the decisive meekness of your calmness.
Yeah.
And I like that flip the switch because listen, I get it. I love it. So
Yeah.
please share.
Yeah. I would say a funny story is so again in that position, right? Like people hear Secret Service and they're like, oh, I get this question a lot. Would you really take a bullet for the president? Our job is definitely, to protect the office, and it's not about politics. It's not about whether you like or dislike this person. You're protecting the office. You're protecting the person that is in that position respectfully.
Yeah. I love that.
And honestly, like my interactions have always, been nice, holidays, they take care of you, And I remember like one time I was down and Ivanka, she like really likes to see like the female agents because, we're like not as much, on the details anyway. So I remember walking, I was on my break and she was on the tennis court and she was like, hi. And she's like, wait, and I was like, me? Hey, and so like in that same visit, I was a field agent. I wasn't on the president's detail. So, I was there and I was basically in a place that I wasn't supposed to be because everybody around me were in suits and I was like dressed down.
Right.
And I found myself like standing next to Trump and he looked at me and I looked at him and I was like, he was like, hi. And I was like, good morning, sir. And I was so embarrassed because I was not supposed to be there at all, but I just was in the wrong place. So no, but he was nice about it. But I think he knew I wasn't supposed to be
He's
there.
like,
either.
thanks for protecting me, but
I don't know you. You're not supposed to be here. So yeah, no, that was a funny one. I was like, oh God, they're gonna kill me. So yeah, no, it was a good experience. I don't remember the other question you asked me. But.
Well, what was something that you from that vice presidency, that detail you felt was either a moment like that confirm something for you? And I asked that question because you've had a colorful life. Like if you were 50, nothing changes. But I think the fact that you're 30, that intrigued me.
Yeah.
Because I've known you as an entrepreneur. I've known you in the Mayweather. What I've known of you is consistency. That's what I've known. And people don't realize that as an entrepreneur, you have to be consistent.
Yeah.
You don't know what's next. It's easy to see a nice car, a nice house, a nice end product. And everyone talks about the middle ground, but the middle ground is where victories happen.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I asked you about that moment, because this was kind of the end of your Secret Service career, meaning you then decided to evolve, and we'll get to that, and time's flying quick, which I love. But so what of that, if anything, that you feel at that point, because things were starting to change in your life, that you share with me off the record?
I don't think I've had any specific defining moments while I was on the detail, because by the time I moved to DC, I was on a vice president's detail. So I was there for Pence, and then I was also there for Kamala when she came in. So I worked with her a little bit. But I would say the defining moment, I was still here in LA, and this was when the gym had just started and it was booming. Things were going great. I was paying myself every month. And then I, had my Secret Service job, and then we had government shutdown. And in my 8 years in the government, we had plenty of scares. That was the first time I ever had like an actual government shutdown, and I didn't get paid for 3 weeks. And thankfully, I did have a business that was paying me, and so I wasn't not getting paid at all. I was still able to do what I needed to do, and that was very defining for me. And also, when the pandemic happened and I did still have my job and we weren't in a government shutdown, you see how that flips? Like
Yep.
I have
Yep.
my day job that's paying me during a pandemic where my gym, my business that was paying me isn't able to pay me any longer. And then during the government shutdown, when I had my business, my job wasn't able to pay me, but I have a business that's paying me.
Yeah.
So those moments were very defining for me and definitely, helped me understand, like, and not everybody, wants to work the 9 to 5, but also not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I just so happen to want to do both, and I reap the benefits from doing both.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
but I want to end actually not in going back to that, because I kind of found my own way in my entrepreneur career doing that, which we'll get back to. But I
Yeah.
love that you shared that, because some hard moments made you look outside
Yeah.
and you ran with it.
Yeah.
Later, a couple years later, it became pivotal in your financial career, because one gave out, one kept you going, then vice versa.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, I believe you're in a position where you have a good federal situation going on, benefits, all the perks of the federal world, but the entrepreneurship now, real estate,
Yeah.
and you're now able to move that. So I believe all that sets you up for a perfect road.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And I love that. And I want to encourage guests in a moment when I come back to that.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all that. Truly, I think that's so inspiring. I love a lot of firsts for you.
Yeah.
A lot of grit along the entire way.
Yeah.
Resilience. But this is an important and powerful question. There's no doubt in the last 10 years of this stretch that you probably had some major anxiety, some almost or full breakdowns.
Oh, yeah.
So to keep people real with you, which is one, and I know there's plenty many, I have,
Very many.
that you can share, because obviously you were here, you got through it.
Yeah.
So what's one that stands out to you that people can go, okay, if she did it and she's willing to share, I can do it?
Yeah.
What's one that stands out to you along this entire decade?
I would say like closing my gym was, I just had this epiphany that I was grieving the loss of my gym for about a year. I didn't even really realize
Oh,
it.
wow. Okay.
And so my gym closed July 2022. And so from July 2022 till maybe halfway through 2023 was just, I would say maybe around about a year. From 2022 to 2023, it was just tough for me. And, it's a lot more expensive to close a gym than it is to keep it open.
To do it the right way.
Yeah, to do it
Because
the right
obviously
way.
I went through that, as you obviously
Yeah.
know, and I did. I left with a pretty big price tag to end it right with the landlord, end it right with everybody,
Yeah.
and to keep, because I'm still in this community, so I didn't want to be hiding.
Yeah.
And thank God I did it the right way,
Yeah.
because, but continue,
yeah,
yes.
exactly. So I would say, I definitely went through the grief process, and it's almost like losing an actual person.
Yeah.
Of like the anger, the depression, the bargaining, like, the 5 stages of grief, if you know them, like, I went through all of those. And I don't know that there's like a specific moment, but I definitely remember just calling my mentor. And I was sitting at the gym and I'm trying to like sell my equipment and I'm like crying and I'm like I called him to talk about real estate. But as soon as he answered the phone, I just
Yeah.
broke
but
down.
he's a go-to for you in your
Oh,
life.
yeah.
So when you heard that voice that's been there, your agenda
Yeah.
went out the door.
It went out the door.
Yeah.
And he prayed with me.
I love that.
He always will pray with me. And, definitely like a true mentor. And that day he told me I needed to go on sabbatical. I just posted about this on my stories.
Okay, I'll
ironically.
check that out.
He told me to go on, he said, you need to go on sabbatical. And I had never been on one before. I've been on plenty of vacations, but I'm with people, I'm doing excursions,
But never by yourself, just to take a moment.
Never. And he said, and this is an emergency. He was like, I don't want to hear you got stuff going on. Cause I was in my head, I already started like,
He already knew where you're going to go.
Yeah, no.
No, he already knew that you were going to start going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
And that's why
I
he
got
was,
stuff to do.
And that's why he was adamant to say, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is an emergency.
Yeah. Good
And
for
I was
him.
like,
Good for him.
I was like, oh, okay, I can move some stuff around. So I left about 2 or 3 days after that. And originally I was like, I'll go in 2 weeks. He was like, you need to go now.
Wow.
And so I went. I went to San Diego, was, quick, last minute, is far enough, is out of the city.
Yeah.
Got this beautiful Airbnb studio style that was sitting over the freeway, but it's like had a lot of greenery. It was just very peaceful. And I listened to, music. I think there's this artist called Landrell, and he does a lot of like frequency and like just like calming music. Listen to that. I read a book called Eat That Frog about like procrastination and stuff. So I finished that book and I worked out and I meditated and I prayed. I had a therapy session. Like,
Nice. Okay.
I just really took that time for myself, and it was just 2 days.
Yeah.
But when I got home, everything that was stressing me out, my equipment that I couldn't sell got sold. I had a real estate deal that I was trying to close that was taking forever. It closed that same week. I unfortunately I had a lawsuit with a former employee, and like that was just also daunting me, but paid off, done. So like everything that was kind of stressing me out just went away, and it was just
Wow.
me taking that time for myself.
Well, there's two things I want to say to that. Or actually, three. One is kudos to your mentor to being honest and real.
Yeah.
Because that takes strength, right? You didn't want to hear that, but you needed to hear it. Two, we talk about this a lot in my family and in life is you got to release to receive.
Yeah.
Sometimes we try to hold on to what we know,
Yeah.
but we don't give room for the things that are meant to be.
Yeah. So
Right.
good.
And so I applaud that as well. And look what happened. I believe
Yeah.
that God answered immediately for you, like a fast track. Like you came back in
So
three
fast.
pivotal parts. And that 48 hours, though,
Yeah.
and this is what I share, and I hope people hear this clearly. It's not the duration. It could have been 24. In this case, it was 48 hours.
Yeah.
But it was you releasing things you were trying to control.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you were able to just be. So that's it. And the last part of that is also of these things I was sharing is also for you to be able to recognize it.
Yeah.
See, a lot of people will go through victories and don't recognize those. And I just recently took a couple days for myself, my own sabbatical.
Nice.
But I always tell people, see, it's better, and I as an entrepreneur, to go do it when you're in a good place
Yes.
compared to what you were feeling.
Yes.
And that's the key is because it's easier, not easier initially
Yeah.
when you're fried. But when you're good, you're like, but something, and that's what I felt for me. I felt like, I just saw you not too long ago and it's all good. But I felt like I needed to regroup.
Yeah.
And I did. I took a couple of days off and I regrouped and I did nothing. But that release came back with some powerful things. And that is, to me, the 9 to 5 entrepreneur balance of things, right?
Yeah.
Man, time is flying with you. Wow. Okay. So I got to bring it home here. Man, I love this, Tay.
Yay, we got to do a part 2.
We'll have to do part 2. And there's so many great things in that. So one thing I want to take away for people, that hopefully they take away from this part, is that balance of 9 to 5 entrepreneur. So for me, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, right? Along the way, I've had to go get a 9 to 5 job when I just burnt out.
Yeah.
Right. So in the last couple decades, I don't want to be forced to that. So I had to find what I would encourage people to find a good entrepreneur job, for lack of better, part of you and make it great.
Yeah.
And then, so that became my 9 to 5, let's say, and then start the others. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, the mistake I see them make is master of all,
Yeah.
but they don't really master it all.
Yeah.
They're just okay at all.
Yeah.
And I would encourage them, like I had to focus on Brownstone now. For 5 years, that was everything.
Yeah.
And I'm still going, obviously, but investing. But now I have good teams, good systems, good process.
Yeah.
So now I can, for lack of better, in my venture off to a couple of these things, now they all tie in together.
Yeah.
But that's why I applaud you, because you do actually have a great 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But now in your entrepreneur, you aren't going to just go leave. And I think a lot of people think you got to leave your day job.
Yeah.
And yes, and sometimes that's needed.
Yeah.
But I told this to a friend of mine not too long ago. I've been a seasoned entrepreneur since the age of 15 and super seasoned since 21. So me jumping ships is not that much of a shocker.
Right.
But if you've been a 9 to 5 all your life and you jump ship, you've never been in these seas.
It's a shock.
It's a shock. So I think it's good that we're running out of time because they're going to have to come back to part 2 for you and I and 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But I want to give the last couple of minutes a chance. And I just did this today and so far I'm going to put pressure because I know you can handle it.
Okay.
You get to ask me a question.
Oh.
Now, so far, the first couple of guests asked me a question and I was like, ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So anything you think that you would like me to share, I would like to answer for you and for our guests. And then I have one more for you and we'll wrap it up till next time.
Okay. Ooh. So we didn't really get into our real estate conversations. So I'm definitely gonna ask you a real estate question. For myself and anybody else who may be watching, that like I would consider myself, especially because I worked a 9 to 5, I'm very conservative. I do 1 or 2 deals a year, you know. For somebody that wants to expand and grow their business into something that maybe they could do full time, what would you say that process could look like? And we know there's no cookie cutter way, but like if you had to give me a path of just kind of growing into maybe that developer kind of phase, like what would that look like?
That's a great question. And it's really different than the other questions. So I love that. Honestly, the answer is actually simple for me at this age and stage of my life. And that is master your steady income first. Master it. Not kind of, not would have. I mean, I'm talking a strong boat that can weather storms. Then you do like you did back in college. You actually worked and went to college, right? Some people go to college and they can focus on college the whole time. A lot of people work and go to college, right? I see benefits to both. But in this case, think of, for me, I'd give that recommendation because here's what happens. And it just happened recently to a friend of mine. This person asked me for some advice. I said, do not leave that job. But they're like, no, but I see you're an entrepreneur. I go, yeah. But I also have bankruptcies. I have falls. I have things on my resume that I would not want my worst enemy to go through.
Yeah.
So you don't need to go through that.
Yeah.
I didn't have the mentors, technology, or the resources that you might have today. So I would say now spend 2 hours a night, weekends, or whatever, master the second part of that. So if you want to be an agent, go shadow. What's the first thing anyone that wants to be in law enforcement, they offer now? Ride-alongs. Go do a ride-along. So I would say is master your day job. I mean, where there is no chance you can screw it up for the most part, right? So you're good. Your bread and butter is good. Now, instead of watching TV late at night or instead of going to a club or whatever you do, take those hours and apply it to your next career. Okay? So that's what I do. I'm just telling you exactly what I do.
Yeah.
I become a master of my next craft.
Yeah.
Why I took those days off is to restructure this. I'm being real. This is a live, great question.
Yeah.
I had to think because I pushed it.
Yeah.
We shot all kinds of episodes and I'm very grateful for them all. But I knew now, like, let me look at this. Now let me put this into money.
Yeah.
And now let me put this into blessings.
Yeah.
And that's what's about to happen.
Yeah.
But I had to stop and now retweak my objectives. So I would tell somebody, if they want to be a developer, go shadow developer. You want to be a real estate agent? Go shadow that. Start with that. Read, educate. Now you have YouTube, all these things. Then be part of somebody else's team for a while. That way you're making less, but you're learning on someone else's dime.
Yeah.
And you're still making some money. So I'll leave you with that. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. That's really good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So the last thing with you ending on this part, so they're going to come back for a part 2 for us, is what are your words of wisdom? And there's a lot of things that you shared. And I told you we didn't even get to, we got to one of them or maybe 2, which I love. We'll definitely do a part 2. What is something at any age, someone watching, someone hearing today, that you can share with them in an applicable way that you can kind of give some words of wisdom as we end today's show?
Yeah. It's one of my mantras. And I always say, just to put things into perspective for people, especially when they're in that pursuit of whatever they're in pursuit of, is life doesn't get easier. We just get better.
Ooh. Okay, I'll give you
better.
credit when I share that.
Yeah.
I love that.
We just get better or we just get wiser because things we want to do, it's like, oh, I can't do it because, this just happened or that just happened. It's always going to be something.
Amen.
It's always something.
Yep.
This life is going to throw things at us every which way.
There's never a perfect time.
It's never a perfect time. However, we do get wiser. We do get better. We may run into roadblocks. And especially in entrepreneurship, if you're a smart one, you won't make the same mistake twice.
Amen to that.
So that
I
means
became smarter. It took me 2 times, but I'm getting it. Okay.
You get better though.
I get better.
You get better every time, even if you make the mistake.
Those are great words. Those are great words, Tay. Seriously,
Yeah.
I love that because I always say, it's not what happens, it's how we react to it.
Yeah.
Right? And like you said, there's never a perfect time. You were forced a couple times to make decisions, but wisdom is now knowing to make decisions when you're not forced to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, Tay, we are going to leave them hanging. Hopefully they want to come back and thank you. We'll definitely tag some of the other things that you're a part of, your nonprofit, all those things, so people can support you. And thank you for being a guest on today's show.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Positive Traction with Coach Henry. Thank you, Tay. And till next time, have a blessed day.